for you to be joining us. And it has just been my privilege over this last year to be your host for all of these incredible online adventuring we've been doing to all of our sister cities, all of our Albuquerque sister cities. And today we're excited to introduce you to our last two. We're going to be visiting Lusaka, Zambia, and Albuquerque, Spain today. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bailey, who is the chair of our Albuquerque Lusaka committee. Welcome, Dr. Bailey. You're not up there.
Lusaka, Zambia.
There you are. There you are. I'm going to hide my...
Okay, I'm on the phone, so I'll be moving around. Okay, thank you. You ready? Okay, welcome to the Lusaka, Zambia committee presentation for the Albuquerque Sister Cities Foundation International Tea Event. I'm Harold Bailey, committee chair. I want to thank Ms. Agape, a student at Western New Mexico University in Silver City, New Mexico. Thanks to Mr. Richard Buckler, New Mexico Sister Cities president and Albuquerque Sister Cities Foundation treasurer. Thanks to my former committee co-chair, Mr. Patrick Mapalo, honorary consul of Zambia for New Mexico. Thanks to President Pam Feather for providing me assistance when needed. All have made it possible for this presentation to become a reality. I also want to thank former Albuquerque Mayor R.J. Berry for making it possible to formally establish a relationship between Lusaka, Zambia, and Albuquerque. For the last 2 decades, there have been an interest to identify and establish a sister city in Africa. In 2011, we were introduced to the country of Zambia by visits of head chieftains and kings of major tribes in Zambia. So now, let's get to our pictorial presentation of Lusaka in specific and Zambia as a country. So we can start the pictures.
Hello all, I'm Richard Buckler. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Bailey. And for all that may not know, Dr. Bailey has been so instrumental behind the scenes all these years when he was holding the executive director position at the Office of African American Affairs, and currently his current position as president of the local chapter of the NAACP. Dr. Bailey, we thank you for all the continued support you've given us to really bring this about, this dream that we've had to have a sister city representative of our community here in New Mexico. And so Zambia was basically introduced to us in 2011 by Patrick Mapalo when he brought a group of kings here. So you can see the map there. You can see that it's landlocked, 8 countries surround it. We'll go on to the next slide. And there it is a little closer up. We're going to focus on Lusaka and some of the other, and 2 other sister cities that are in New Mexico, but mostly on Lusaka. There is another one in northeast, and you can see up the top of the map there is Kasama, and that's partnered with Clovis. Patrick Mapalo's vision, the honorary consul, as Dr. Bailey had said, had basically had this dream to have multiple sister cities for the state of New Mexico, and we do. And down and toward the bottom there, you'll see down almost at the bottom of the map, you'll see Livingston, and that's partnered with Santa Fe. So we do have these strong connections here in our state. So let's just focus on these right now. Let's go to the next slide. This is downtown Lusaka, our sister city, Albuquerque's sister city. What a wonderful city it is, as you can see, very modern, and about 3. So this has been a great sharing time for the city of Albuquerque, be able to share infrastructure, share best ideas with them, exchange ideas. We learn so much from participating with them. So we're going to go through and just talk about the establishment of our sister city. What we're going to do then is we're going to show some of the projects that we've been engaged in. We'll show some of the fun things, the cuisine about the country. And then we're going to end up with and then we'll have a student presentation by Ms. Agape that Dr. Bailey had mentioned. She has been participating the last 5 years in various projects we've had. You'll see some of the great things that are going on. And then what we're hoping is we can entice you to want to go. Maybe in a couple years, we'll have a trip there. That's what we're hoping. We'll end with some scenic photos of the animal safaris you can take there, the photo safaris. So let's move on to the next slide. This is the visit in 2014 by Deputy Mayor Potiphar Tembo, standing there next to Mayor Barry. At the far right side is, well, my left side, Mayor Barry's right side, is the Honorary Consul, Patrick Mapalo. You'll see his picture a little bit more. But this was the first presentation of a flag by a delegation from Zambia. Let's go to the next slide. Then in 2015, Mayor Barry appointed his Economic Development Director, Gary Oppendahl, you can see in the middle there. And he is standing next to Mayor Columba, and who received our flag. Also on the right-hand side is board member and city representative Randy Trask, who we're really appreciative to for all the liaison work he's done to help us make this connection possible. The next slide, please. But here's Dr. Bailey, as you can see there on our right-hand side, and Patrick Mapalo on the left. But in the middle is a very influential person that we want to introduce you guys to and mention him particularly because of all the benefit he's given, the influence he's lent. This is the chief king of the Bemba tribe, representing 6 million Zambians plus. And he's been here to Albuquerque. This was a picture we took down at the National, our Natural History Museum, actually the Albuquerque Museum. So just so you know who's really been behind the scenes. Let's go to the next slide. Here was the banner and the poster that's now hanging in our convention center that shows how this was established. And now we're going to go on into some of the warm welcome we got when we arrived on there. Look at this colorful dancer. Can you imagine being entertained by this? Let's go on to the next slide. And then just really the welcome they'll give you anywhere you go. When you take a trip out to the country, you take a trip to some of the spots that you want to see, we were always welcomed. And so we're going to look at a short video, 40 seconds long, of a dance welcome we received when we got there in 2015. Projects we've been involved in. So we'll go on to the next slide. And one of the things that we do in sister cities that's so important, and we learn so much from our sister city, but it's the exchange of ideas and collaborations that take place. And there's been some important ones in the area of infrastructure. Like here's a picture of what that was taken of their fire department there. Some of their wonderful servants of their community out there on the front lines. And we'll go to the next slide. And this was what they had. As they call their fire department, their fire truck, the Terminator. But really, in essence, we realized up front that, and Patrick Mapalo recommended to us that we maybe could contribute and maybe supply and train and provide some things that we have. So we'll go to the next slide. Was one of the best projects we were able to accomplish was this donation of one of Albuquerque's fire trucks. So it's really been a great thing. Then we've done things with students. In this picture, you'll see the gentleman up in the far corner there in the blue, our own Dave Bagley, who's our current membership chair, been former president and so much for local sister cities. But here he is. He's participating in a robotics demonstration right there in Lusaka. Let's go on to the next slide. Mayor Columba so recognized this, was so appreciative of the fact that we were helping to develop youth in the STEMs, that he took this picture with the group of students that came to Albuquerque to participate in the Robo-Rave. You'll see right in the middle there's Agape. Hold on, we'll hold that picture right there for a second. We're going to get to let you hear personally in the middle from the Miss Agape right in the middle there in just a few minutes. But there she was 5 years ago. You're going to meet her now, currently in live. Also, Patrick Napalo's son is the one in the blue there. He is now doing so much, been over there and doing so much for this cause too. Let's go to the next slide. Orphanages is one of our projects outreach. And here's Gary Oppendahl. Just really, they brought things for these kids, and just everyone was so appreciative. There he is blowing bubbles. I'm not sure he was as good as the kids on that. Let's go to the next slide. But there was the group. There's his wife, Bev, too. It was such a wonderful exchange, such wonderful participation, and we have ongoing support for this group here. Next slide. It takes a village. We heard that from Hillary Clinton in the past and others. It does take a village, and our friends in Zambia surely recognize this. And here is the village that really is supporting this orphanage. We just wanted to show you this picture just to show that everybody is involved in just really helping one another, and we're just privileged to be part of it. Next slide. Another project that's currently ongoing, and Patrick Napalo is why he's not here today. He's out there right directly involved in putting these beehives together. They manufacture them. They have some funding from the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. And on the next slide, what you'll see is what they do with them. You hang them from a tree. You're able to employ local folks in the rural areas that wouldn't normally be able to get a job and whatnot. And the goal of the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation funding is to employ at least about half of the women there. So this pulls people up, it allows them to be able to have a way of making an income. Let's go to the next slide. This is the Minister of Gender that Patrick Napalo traveled with. Her name is Elizabeth Fury, and here she is doing another project with us, and it's giving away bicycles to young ladies so they can actually have travel to where they can find employment. A lot of times your cities are nearby, but you have rural community who need a way of getting to their jobs. And here she is giving away bicycles to young ladies, and it really helps them, as well as the Honey Farm Project, do that. Dr. Shepard, the president of Western New Mexico University in Silver City, is pictured here with King Makuni. King Makuni actually has come to New Mexico several times. And we're just really pleased that Western New Mexico University has been partnering and basically putting together a way for students in Zambia to come to New Mexico. And here he is, we're making some of that agreement there with the king of the Lion King, we call him, because he truly is. You see that wonderful display there. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that they've done is they visited some of the nursing centers there. Well, Western has a good nursing program too. So there's exchanges going on between the two. And we also have some of our students that Miss Agape will talk about in a few minutes about what they're doing. Well, I know one of them at least has been enrolled in the nursing program at Western New Mexico University. But this is some of the collaborations that's going on. Now, I'm going to turn the next slides over to talk to Miss Agape.
Agape, we can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Can you refresh your screen, please?
Well, it looks like we have some technical difficulties, I'm assuming. Well, maybe we can get Miss Agape back on. Thank you, Agape, for being part of the robotics program back 5 years ago, and just all your involvement. There are several students now from Zambia and from our sister city, Lusaka, that are attending. And there I see Agape again. Are you able to talk, Agape?
Yes.
Oh, well, we'll turn it over to you for now. Talk about what you.
So this I was watching as a member spotlight for the week for my signing identity for systems and for Master and Care Club. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. And then next slide, please. So this is the Master and Care Club team. And
For some reason, at the same time. We'll see if we can get Agape back on there. This is Agape with some of the students and some of the projects they've been doing there in Silver City. Should we go to the next slide? And here they are participating in the tax program there and helping learn taxes and the American system of taxes. And I'm sure that's really quite exciting. And here are some of the students there. Agape could introduce them better than I could. We'll go to the next slide. More of the students there. I don't know which one is enrolled in the nursing program, but one of the gentlemen, Ezra, I believe, is enrolled in the nursing program, and we talked about that exchange that's been going back and forth. And so it's wonderful to see that collaboration taking place. The ladies, all dressed up and ready to go out for an activity there. And then I think we have this last picture, and here's a picture of some of the students there again. On the far right, your right, you'll see Honorary Consul Patrick Mapalo and his wife, Martha Mapalo, who is Dr. Mapalo, we should say. She actually is the doctor here at the University of New Mexico. And I just love the vision they have to help some of their own countrymen and just all that they're contributing to our own society here too, and helping keep us well and all that. So thanks again to them. I don't know if Agape can get back on. We'll hold that picture there. Can Agape get back on and say anything if we have her on with me? Can you hear me, Agape, now?
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Let's leave me on. And it seems like if I'm on and the picture's up, you can somehow it works. Technology. Why don't you say a few things? I hope I covered the bases okay for you. Did you want to say anything else on that?
So, well, this is Mr. Patrick when he visited us in Silver City and his wife, and they sponsored us with lunch. I mean, students love free lunch, so it was good. And they didn't stay for a while, but they've really been helpful. I mean, with the introduction of robotics at our school by Patrick, that was really helpful.
And how's school for you right now? How are you enjoying it?
Well, it's very thrilling and challenging, especially with everything being moved online. It's been hard to adapt, but it's the new normal. So it's going to be hard to go back to face, but it's really good.
And that starts up again, I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Agape, for all that you've been doing and being our liaison there at Western New Mexico University. And give our greetings to all the students there and to Dr. Shepard. And we look forward to connecting more with you guys in the future.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll move on to the next slide. What we're going to do now is we're going to focus on some of the other things you might get when you come to Zambia. So when we got there, we had this wonderful buffet, and you'll find the similar foods all throughout the finest restaurant hotels. Chicken, of course, you might get some gazelle, but there are a lot of vegetarian dishes. And so that one dish in off to the front there, the one with the green look to it, I believe it's called efishashi, and it's basically greens in a peanut sauce. And so there's so many of these different wonderful cuisine things that you'll be able to sample. Let's go on to the next slide. But then there's local stuff too. When you travel from city to city or from Lusaka down to Livingston, we stopped and we got these pictures of crab. You can just buy this and eat it for dinner. Let's go on to the next page. Here's the next slide. And here's a gentleman who was just wonderful, wanting to sell it to us, and just what a fine gentleman he was. It was just fun to do that and see those kind of things. Well, what do you do when you want to cook your food? A lot of the locals, let's go back one slide, or leave it right there. This is charcoal. Take a look at that. There is quite an industry of charcoal. So folks in the rural areas will develop these charcoal things that basically those in the city who want to cook their food will often just buy the charcoal and they have a head start on cooking their meal. And the next slide will show one of the most popular dishes that are it's called nashima. It's a corn maze, and it takes a lot of stirring to do, but they'll use the charcoal and they'll be able to cook it. And well, if you feel like you've lacked something and you need something else, you'll have a lot of different roadside farmer markets, so to speak. So we'll go to the next slide. And I forgot to talk about these little things. These are the mapani worms or caterpillars. They're not the same as our caterpillars here. So don't do this at home, as they might say, right? But these are the most nutritious things. You say, really? I had some. They're very good. But these are higher in protein than some of the meats that you could even eat over there. So it's quite a staple too. Let's go on to the next slide. You might pick some of these up from some of these farmer markets that you might see along the side. Let's go to the next slide. Basically, those caterpillars, those maponi worms, they are available twice a year, harvested usually twice a year. And so the locals here will go ahead and they'll go out, they'll get them and sell them right here in the marketplace. So you can get whatever you want right here. So now what we're going to do is we'll spend some time giving you some pictures of the photo safaris you might be able to go on if you go to Zambia. What Patrick Mapalo told me once, he said, Richard, we're not much into zoos. And he's like, matter of fact, we don't think animals should be in zoos. Like, well, why is that? Because animals don't live in zoos. Obviously, in Zambia, they're wide open on animal reserves, 1,000 square miles, for example. And here you're going to see some of those wild animals, if you want to call them that, in their natural habitat. And we're going to go through some of these slides here. And we've got about 5 minutes that we're going to go through some of these things here. So here's some zebras. Go to the next slide. I want to say a comment about this. These are the rare white rhinos, which you can see there, and they're protected by the Zambian government. They actually have trackers that have to be armed to prevent the poachers from swooping in with helicopters to come in and get them. And so the Zambian government is doing a great job of protecting them. And here they are. We were able to go see them. Next slide. They actually get this close. You don't want to get too close, though. Let's go see some more pictures. Water is a big thing. Rivers are a big thing. The next slide, you'll see this slide and this. Hippos. Wow, they're really fun to watch. You want to stay away from them, though. They don't like you invading their territory. So we were on boats. Giraffes. We'll go on to some elephants next. Elephants are one of the things that made the most impression on me there. We were in the middle of the bush, and this whole convoy of elephants came by. The guide said, quiet, don't make any noise. They came right by us, 50 of them in a line. Let's go on to the next page. The next slide. Let's go on to the next slide after this. One way to see things in Zambia is to rent one of these houseboats. So you'll see this is a common sight. And we'll go on to the next slide. Don't get too close to the river, I found out, to take a photo like this, because there might be some crocodiles. And we'll see some of those in a bit. First, water buffalo, though, they are probably one of those fierce protective animals you're going to come across if you go there. So stay in the boat. see them from a distance. Let's go on and see some of them. Keep going on next slide. Yeah, they started paying attention to us. Like, what are we doing? Let's go on to the next slide. Yeah, it looks a little like we better not get too much closer. Here's a nice little monitor lizard. That looks so, innocent. But next slide starts showing what you want to watch out for, those crocodiles. Let's go on to a few more slides ahead. Keep going and keep going to the next one. What you'll see a lot of is these crocodiles having their mouth wide open. They're not really threatening you. What they're doing is they're just getting rid of excess heat. So that's one of those funny things that you think, well, what are they doing? Well, that's how they just bathe. A few more slides I put in there of elephants, because what you gotta go is see a river crossing. National Geographic moment. We literally saw this entire herd of elephant go across. Babies dip below the water. Never did see them. Now hold that slide there for a second. And just basically, they go over to the islands in the middle of the rivers so they can play in the mud. It's just, they're the king. They really do. They do what they want to do. But it's great to see. Let's go on to the next slide. We saw a picture of King Makuni earlier. This is his village. The day we got there, the Great American Race was being filmed, and we actually had people arriving for that. So we had a chance just to really see, not only did we get welcome, but we got to see some of the Great American Racers welcome. Let's just roll through the next two slides. Let's just see his village. They do have electricity, they do have running water and all. What he's known for is he's called the Lion King. I might have mentioned that. You saw his big lion on the floor there. Keep going. We'll go through another picture there, and we're going to see a picture of Patrick Mapalo with how could we do that? We couldn't do that in our own zoos, because this lion's been well fed. And that's the secret. Is the King Makuni has to actually do a ceremony once a year where he puts his whole head inside the lion's mouth. The secret is they feed him well, I was told by him and others. So there's Patrick Mapalo again. Let's go to the next slide. I want to just quickly mention that they have created this historical a way for you to travel in Zambia, to get a feel for what it was like to travel by train. That was a most common way of travel for decades. And so we're going to go through the next slides in just a couple seconds. They have this museum you can do. The next slide. We'll keep going on those just to give you a feel for just some of the fun things you can see, the historic nature of things. Keep going. There's the train you could travel on if you wanted, that they put together a train ride for. Inside, just looks like a regular train to me, but very fun. We'll stop right there for a minute. We're almost done with our presentation, and we'll turn it back over to Dr. Bailey in a minute, but we'll see if there's any kind of questions. You would be remiss to go to Zambia without going to what they call Mosi Oatunya, the smoke that thunders, and we call Victoria Falls. It's a wonderful place. It literally falls about 355 feet down. The smoke rises up 100 feet up above, so that's why they call it the smoke that thunders. And it's just one of those things. But the peaceful river above it, the Zambezi River, let's go to the next slide. We're going to conclude this portion of you'll see these kind of sights. I tell you what, we have great sunsets here, and they have great sunsets there. Let's go to the next slide. There's a beautiful picture, what you can be doing, just relaxing, enjoying the peacefulness of the Zambezi River. And that will end the photo pictures that we have. Let's check and see if there's any questions. Do we have any questions that you saw, Anj?
I didn't see any questions come up, no. But that was a great presentation, Richard. Thank you. How exciting.
Is Dr. Bailey back on at all to say a few closing remarks?
He sure is.
Okay. Thank you all for letting me present.
Me? Can you hear me? Okay.
We can
Well,
hear you,
thanks a
Dr.
lot,
Bailey.
Mr.
Go
Butler
right
and Ms.
ahead.
Agape. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their time and attention, and sorry for the technical difficulties. But we look forward to planning a future trip to Lusaka, Zambia, and we will keep you posted as details develop. So thank you very much for your time, and good afternoon.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. I'm going to hand it now over to Alberto Solis, who's going to take us to Albuquerque, Spain.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Alberto Solis, the chair of Albuquerque, Spain. Hope you're having a good Sunday and a good weekend. I wanted to share with you some information on Albuquerque. And I wanted you to remember three things about Albuquerque that we're going to cover today. And the first one is, what are the historic linkages that we share as the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico, with the town of Albuquerque in Spain. And so the second is, how and when did we become a sister city with Albuquerque? And then third, where is Albuquerque in Spain, and what is it known for? So let's begin. Okay, so first of all, where we get our name, as many of you may know or may not, our name Albuquerque was originally Albuquerque when a farming settlement was established here by the colonial governor of New Mexico at the time, Don Francisco Cuervo y Valdez. And so in 1706, he named that farming settlement, which had about 35 families that came up from what today is Mexico. He named it after the Viceroy of New Spain, which was Mexico, or became Mexico after Mexico got independence from Spain. Anyway, the Viceroy of New Spain was Don Francisco Fernandez de la Cueva Enrique. He was the Viceroy, or the head, right, oversaw for the crown, for the Spanish crown, oversaw the New Spain. And so the colonial governor named this farming settlement in honor of the Viceroy. And so the Viceroy was the 10th Duke of Albuquerque in Spain. And so our name originally had, as many of you may know, an R in it, Albuquerque. And then, of course, over time, we became Albuquerque. And so maybe because folks couldn't roll that R, but it's a joke. But anyway, so second, we became a sister city in 2003, but it wasn't like the city just became a sister city all of a sudden, right? It actually went through a process, and 2 years before then, it was a friendship city. And so it's interesting to think that with our namesake being Albuquerque, that it took this long to become a sister city, but despite the linkages and the relationships that were already established over many, many years, travels between people from Albuquerque to Albuquerque and from there to here, I'm sure, over the years. But we formalized that relationship in 2003 by establishing the sister city relationship, and it has grown since then. So where exactly is Albuquerque? So as we look at the map on the screen, and you'll see some images later on in the slide deck, but let's just get a sense of where Albuquerque is if you haven't noticed. So, Albuquerque is closer to the border of Portugal than it is to the capital city of Spain, Madrid. Madrid, it's about 225 miles away from Madrid, and about just under 20 miles, about 15 miles from the border of Portugal. So many people that travel to Albuquerque usually go to, into Portugal, into eastern Portugal, or they go, into Lisbon and whatnot. Maybe some of them travel into Lisbon and travel to Albuquerque from there, or travel into Madrid and then make their way to Albuquerque. What I'm not showing here on this map is the region that Albuquerque is in. I mentioned that then it's named after the 10th Duke, right? But our city is named after the 10th Duke. But in that region, which is known as Extremadura, It was a region that was also populated by the Moorish, right? When the Moors conquered Spain, most of what is Spain, that extended into the Extremadura region. And so now so Extremadura is an autonomous community in Spain. They have communities in Spain, and then of course there are 2 provinces in that community. So if you look at where Albuquerque is, to the upper part of that, if you kind of follow it a little bit towards north of Portugal, it's known as Cáceres. And so in Cáceres is upper Extremadura. And below it's like, if you just kind of look below Albuquerque, kind of going below, that's known as the provinces of Badajoz, and which means basically lower Extremadura. And some of you, do any of you know, maybe put in the comments what Extremadura means? Where did that word come from? That word basically came from the Reconquest. So when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella began the Reconquest to drive the Moors out of Spain, as they came into that region, right, in the 12th century, they began to notice how extreme it was. So if you just think of the words extrema, which means, well, in Spanish, extrema is the feminine for something that's extreme. And then dura, right? Dura is like hard, like hardship or difficult, right? So you can imagine back then they gave the name Extremadura to that region because it was very hardship, which is another thing that we tend to share between Extremadura and New Mexico, be it, before non-indigenous peoples came to New Mexico or after the Spaniards and others, from the east of the United States came to the territory of New Mexico, and after it was a state. Our regions were beautiful, but difficult, semi-arid and difficult to habitate in some cases. And so we share that in common between Extremadura and New Mexico. And so the people were very resilient. And so one of the things that, before I get into what Albuquerque is like, I'm just giving you the kind of the frame, if you will, because I think it's important to capture the essence of the history, right, and the origins and the heritage. So many of the explorers that came to the Americas, be it to what is today Mexico, and then moved their way up into the Southwest, into Central America, the Caribbean, South America, and so on, even into the Philippines. Many of those people, those explorers, were from southern Spain, and also from the Extremadura region, right? And so a lot of brave and resilient explorers from that region made their way to explore the Americas as we know them today. And so let's dial it back down to Albuquerque. So Albuquerque, you would think, is a big city if we equate it to our city, but it's actually a town. And it's a town of less than 6,000 people, about between 5,600 people to maybe close to 6,000 people. It keeps a lot of its historic origins in place. Many of the kings of Portugal, the kingdoms of Portugal, oversaw Albuquerque, right, before borders were drawn between Portugal and what is today Spain. And as you know, Spain is made up of many kingdoms, so as well as Portugal. And so Albuquerque fell under the kingdoms, the various kingdoms or reigns of Portuguese monarchy. And then, of course, now under the Spanish monarchy, and after it was reconquered. So so Albuquerque as a town is surrounded by this extreme region, which is known for its cork industry. So in Albuquerque and outside of Albuquerque, as many of you that have been there have noticed, is that it's lined with cork trees, and so it's a huge cork production region of the world. And so out of Spain, a lot of the cork for wine bottles and so on, ports. Are manufactured there out of Albuquerque. And over the years, we've had the opportunity to engage with them. So back when I was the head of international trade under the Martin Chavez administration, we celebrated the tricentennial in Albuquerque. I don't know if some of you might have been a part of that or remember that, but that was celebrated in the biopark of Albuquerque. And so the then mayor, that was a mayor for over 15 years, Jose Angel Vadillo, visited. And so I'll get into that a little later about pointing him out. But we have a lot of history that took place with Albuquerque, and during the tricentennial, Albuquerque and Mayor Valdillo was a big draw because of our namesake. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. So Albuquerque, in terms of the optics, in terms of what is seen by tourists or even those that live there, is well known for its medieval castles, and one of which being the Castillo de Luna, so the Luna Castle, right? And so the Luna Castle is one that is well known in Albuquerque. It's still a tourist draw there in Albuquerque. So there you can see the base of the castle. Next slide, please. So some of the imagery of cities in the provinces of Badajoz and in Cáceres, such as Albuquerque, look like this, right? These are some of the images of cities there in the region. Next slide, please. And then here you see the streets of Albuquerque, and so you can see in the terms of the architecture, how it's kept a lot of its origins, right? And so one of the also the areas of architecture, I didn't include a slide in this, but they're the aqueducts, right? The aqueducts introduced by the Romans, and so the heritage that precedes what today is the Spanish heritage was the Romans and, of course, the Moors, right? And if some of you were at the annual meeting at the Rio Bravo Brewery this past week, you might have heard our guest speaker, Dr. Andrew Bernard, talk about, Andrew Bernard talk about the use of acequias in that region, Albuquerque, a semi-arid region like Albuquerque, New Mexico, as well as in South America, Mendoza, Argentina. And so a lot of the architecture that was used in those historic eras, such as when the Moors conquered Spain, or even before then when the Romans ruled Spain and what today is Albuquerque. Some of the remnants are there in terms of aqueducts, acequias that are running for irrigation purposes, and then of course the architecture that you see there, both in its kind of Romanesque and Gothic in terms of some of its churches. Next slide, please. So let's get to the people, and this is what I was mentioning earlier. One of the reasons I believe that we had a good relationship with Albuquerque, not just from a cultural standpoint, but also from a civic one. There wasn't a lot of trade happening between Albuquerque as a city, in our industries here, and Albuquerque, because we're very we're disparate in terms of the industries that we have. However, there have been many exchanges. For example, in robotics, and one of the challenges that Pam Feather was involved in as an engineer, the robotics challenge, a lot of that sharing took place between Albuquerque and Albuquerque, helping the youth and the students there learn and be inspired about robotics. Another opportunity that we could probably see happening here soon would be in STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and in linking what we're learning here in Albuquerque because of the laboratories and the industries that we have here with what could not only inspire students in Albuquerque, even if they have to leave Albuquerque to go study, but come back and make improvements in its infrastructure or its quality of life and economy, but also in maybe solutions that could help everything from agriculture to climate to infrastructure and in its economy, even local government and so on. Make improvements, right? There are always opportunities culturally and in terms of trade and international relations to make improvements and share that kind of information. So the man in the black T-shirt is Jose Angel Vadillo, who was the mayor of Albuquerque at the time. The woman to his left, or if we're looking at the screen to the right, is Maria Murillo, who's the current mayor of Albuquerque. And so my intention is to travel to Albuquerque in the fall as chair to meet her. I haven't met her yet. So, and I will also be traveling for the first time to Albuquerque. And that's why I'm not speaking to you about the essence of the people, because I'm just choosing not to do that until I actually meet them. And then I can authentically say, here from a first person perspective, here's the essence of the people of Albuquerque. But for those of you that have been there, you know that in small towns, and especially where we have a lot of ties, the connections are long lasting, right? And so the focus can then also become how can we improve each other's communities. And so I'm hoping that when I go there, and ideally in September, I can get to Albuquerque to develop a relationship with Mayor Murillo Diaz, and then also with her local economic base and my counterpart that's there, Pablo, who's been a great resource for us here in Albuquerque. And then also to use that as an advanced trip to look at opportunity for a group from Albuquerque, those of us that would be interested, members of international cities, to make a trip to Albuquerque during their medieval festival. So that's the thing that I'm interested in determining, is if they're going to have those again, and those typically take place in August. And so that's where the medieval heritage from the images that you saw there in Albuquerque are celebrated, right? And so we're hoping that that can take place in August of 2022. So mark your calendars and put in a placeholder. And hopefully when I come back from that visit in fall of 2021, I'll have some good news. And that concludes my presentation for Albuquerque. I'd rather use the time to go ahead and open up to questions and on Albuquerque. Oh, one thing I was going to mention is we are also going to show a short video, but we also have a cool video that we found that's longer. It's about 20 minutes, and it's a video that will link in the comments. These videos are on YouTube. This will be like a 2-minute, 3-minute video that's kind of an aerial of Albuquerque, so you can see the landscape and the city, kind of get an idea of what Albuquerque looks like. So whether you've been there, it might give you some goosebumps because you remember being there. And if you haven't been there like me, I mean, it's wonderful to see what the city looks like and visualize visiting. So the other video, the 20-minute video, is folks that traveled from Miami and documented their trip all the way through, like a video log, if you will, all the way through the city, the town of Albuquerque, which is pretty cool. Kind of a fun video. We thought we'd provide the link so people can watch it on their own time. All right, so I'm seeing a question come up. Let me see. Put on my Clark Kent glasses on to see if I can read it. Okay, I got a question from Natalie Blesser. Could you tell us a bit about the importance of La Virgen de Guadalupe in the region and the differences between the two virgins? And I can't read the rest of the chat there. Let me see. Oh, I see. Okay. Differences between the two virgins across the pond. And also about los conquistadores who came from Extremadura. Gracias. So the truth, Natalie, and to all who are listening, is I don't know the answer to that. So the Virgens, although as a Roman Catholic, I can tell you, and as a Mexican citizen, dual citizen, I can tell you that the Virgens, for example, the Virgen of Fatima, right? The Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgen in Spain, and there are other virgins. Or usually recognized by place, by something that happened, an incident that happened in a location. And so I'm not familiar with the history or the information or the essence behind the Virgin there in Albuquerque. If you're asking what about how do they perceive the Virgen de Guadalupe, that was from Hidalgo in Mexico, in Albuquerque, I could just probably say Catholics there would in Spain, Extremadura would probably, in Albuquerque would probably just perceive La Virgen de Guadalupe with reverence, just the way they do in Mexico and we do here, and anywhere really that recognizes the Virgen de Guadalupe as a reverent figure, right? And then the other question is Los Conquistadores. So I wish I had more information on who the conquistadores were, but when I was looking information on migrations from Albuquerque to the Americas, there were people that agreed to join the discovery of the Americas, La Conquista, as they would say, right? And so in La Conquista in the Americas, which was a discovery in the name of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. So a lot of, I don't have the number, but I mean, many of those were from that region, Extremadura, precisely because of the extreme region that it was. And so many of obviously back then they didn't know what the region would be like here in the Americas, much less in New Mexico. But what I believe happened is that those individuals that were from Extremadura were probably recognized for having the ability to live, sustain, survive in extreme regions, semi-arid regions like Extremadura, and would probably be the most capable of surviving and exploring, discovering those places in the New World, in the Americas, that could be similar.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Alberto. That was really cool to be able to learn a little bit more about our Albuquerque namesake. And thank you so much to all of our presenters that took us to Lusaka. And on behalf of everybody at Albuquerque Sister Cities, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being a part of our 5 International Teas series that we did virtually this year. If you're curious to learn more about Albuquerque Sister Cities, we invite you to check us out. It's www.abqsistercities.org. Right there. There's also a link in our comments, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. And so we just invite you to check us out, learn more about who we are, what we do. And with that, we're going to say goodnight. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone.